Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile, with me as usual, Alistair McKenzie. It has been a tough weekend. Lazio played really well against Juventus, but as I presume everybody knows, the result wasn't what we were hoping for, looking at the performance of the match of our team. So Alistair, do you see the glass half empty or half open or half full? Because I think yesterday is the typical match that you can see it in pretty much different ways, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. And yeah, I think the way I see it is that it's got to be a positive thing because, to be honest, it sounds like a strange thing to say given that we've ended up losing the match, but I'd say it was probably Lazio's best performance of the season. I don't think any team has really stretched and tested Juventus as much as we did last night. And it was a really positive response to what was a disappointing result in Naples last week. And to be honest, the reason that I'm most hopeful is simply that if Lazio can replicate that kind of performance with that kind of intensity against the rest of the teams in this league, they'll blow everyone away. So it was really nice to see that kind of attacking swagger back again, which we got lots of last season, obviously, but haven't really had so much this year. And last week we were saying that we thought that Inzaghi may as well go out to attack the game and be proactive. And it's good to see that he's a listener, and he did exactly that. And I think this is proof that seems to be the way forward.
Okay, so I'll take the negative side of things. The negative is you played by far the best match of the season, maybe even of last year too, and you lost. You were able to score only on an own goal, and again you lost, and you're now 8th on the Serie A table. So if you see the negative side, there are plenty of things to be scared, concerned. If you see the positive, there are plenty of things to be happy. The problem is, will Lazio replicate this performance, or this was one-off? Will Inzaghi as well play again like he did yesterday? As you were saying, it was a very offensive team, but the performance, not the result, unfortunately, was really encouraging. So, Alistair, what do you think? Will Inzaghi replicate this starting 11?
Yeah, I kind of expect him to, and also I think he kind of has to. Given the resources he's got available, I think there seems to be no reason for him to change things, especially given that next up is Frosinone, who are, fair enough, they've just got a 4-0 win, but that was against the useless Inzaghi. So I think that he should surely have seen enough to be able to have faith that that's the best approach going forward. I suppose next time it has to change a little bit because Milinkovic-Savic has picked up a yellow card, which means he'll now be suspended for the next game. But yeah, Correa up top with Alberto coming up behind him from midfield. I mean, it's a nice balance. The problem is obviously more, with the defence and with the right side of midfield, which we had to have Marco Parolo occupying for a lack of options yesterday. But yeah, I think that he said after the match, Inzaghi, that he embraced each and every player as they came off the pitch because he thought they deserved it for the way they'd played, and he said that they did everything that they'd talked about doing in training. So I mean, what more can you really ask for? And I'd be amazed if he does anything but kind of stick with that, because like I say, I can't imagine that if Lazio go out and play that way against the likes of Frosinone, it's going to end up with anything other than a victory.
Yes, I agree, but the problem is, and we saw it last year when Lazio played so well in the first 6 months and then didn't replicate in the second half of the season, is that it's not that you played really well one match and then from there you continue like that. I thought Luis Alberto had a terrific game, probably the best of the season. But all the team played well. Watching a little bit, reading a little bit online, the Italian newspapers and website, a lot were complaining about the substitution Simone Inzaghi made, Alistair. Someone wrote that that's the reason why Lazio lost the match. What's your thought about this?
Yeah, I was a bit concerned about that. At the time, it has to be said, because obviously Inzaghi set out with a very attack-minded team. I don't think he had much of a choice given the defensive options he had, but that worked. The intensity worked. I don't think it's fair to say that the team should have been able to maintain the same intensity for 90 minutes that they did in the first half, because that's almost impossible to achieve. However, I don't necessarily think it was the right call to make what were two pretty negative changes, one of which was withdrawing Alberto, who, like you say, had a great game, to bring on Berisha. I don't think that was the worst idea, because Berisha's, it's fresh legs in the middle of the pitch, and he is capable of getting forward as well. But obviously, it's not as attack-minded a player as Alberto. And then also Caicedo for Immobile was a really strange one in my mind, because despite the chance that he missed, and I'm sure we'll get onto that because that, in my mind, would have closed the game, he's still just so much more dangerous to have there than Caicedo, and I didn't really understand what he was hoping to happen from that change. But look, I mean, I think it's one of these things where, because the collapse arrived in the last 15 minutes, and while Inzaghi stuck with the team that he'd chosen from the start, things were going well, and it kind of all fell apart after the substitutions and the changes were being made. So I can understand why people are pointing that out. I don't think it's the reason that we lost the game. I think that I was saying the whole way through this match that if you're not going to take advantage of these opportunities against Juventus, they are going to hurt you. And it's an obvious thing to say, but to finish that first half still goalless, and like you say, to fail to actually score without getting an own goal, we were asking for trouble the whole time. And I think you need to be able to be a bit more clinical. So that aspect was more disappointing to me than any of the substitutions.
Honestly, I thought that the difference was made by the substitution Allegri made. And when you have that many options, Bernardeschi, Cancelo, let's not forget that Cancelo was, if not the primary reason, one of the primary reasons why Inter got to the Champions League last year. And now he's fighting to find a place in the starting 11 of Juventus. When one team brings in Caicedo and the other one brings in Bernardeschi, that was the star of Fiorentina a couple of years ago, that's the big gap that Juventus have with every other Italian team. I don't think Inzaghi made the wrong decision with the substitution. Obviously, bringing in Caicedo, I didn't agree with that. Yes, probably Ciro Immobile was tired. Same thing about Luis Alberto. And as you said, I think it was impossible to keep that speed for 90 minutes for Lazio, that pressure, etc. But when you don't have any option and you bring in Caicedo, I thought Lazio, when Caicedo came in, didn't have any chances. He was pretty much invisible. That's the big difference. But you cannot blame Inzaghi. That's what he has. Probably he thought bringing in Berisha, he would give a little bit more juice to the midfield, and he was hoping that Caicedo could have done something there on front. Instead, he didn't do nothing. So yeah, I thought the difference was the bench Juventus had and Lazio didn't.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is you mentioned the depth there, and you're right, because this is a game that we went into quite rightly, with the big discussion being the fact that Acerbi and Felipe were out, which leaves us with Bastos and Wallace in the same starting lineup, which, as we all know, is about the most kind of terrifying, spine-chilling prospect you can have as a Lazio fan. But Juventus, if you went on social media before this game and even afterwards, you'd see a lot of Juventus fans kind of talking about how up against it they were with their injury problems, and it makes you laugh really in comparison, because that's they're missing the likes of Pjanic and Mandzukic, and you still look at that team and they're complaining about Emre Can, a World Cup winning midfielder who they've had to bring in, and yeah, the quality of depth is just, it's a complete other level. What the Italian press have kept doing this season is that they just refer to Juventus as the Martians, the aliens, and to get across this idea of them being on another planet from everybody else in Italy, and they just are. That the depth, the quality of depth that they've got is another level, and that's why I think it's still possible to lose this game and still be positive about it, because no one's beaten Juventus in Italy this year, and I think that it's going to be hard for anyone to before the season ends. I think you have to take everything in context, because like you say, if one team's bringing on Caicedo and the other one's bringing on Bernardeschi, then there's a bit of a mismatch going on somewhere. But one thing I did want to ask you about to bring up was, I found it quite interesting, despite how late on it was and everything, that we saw Pedro Neto again. And don't forget, this is his first Serie A appearance, and yes, it was just basically a few seconds at the end, and I don't think he even touched the ball. But that was a signal that he is going to be used more. And when we were talking about this after the Navarra game, if he only gets 15 minutes then, how much chance is he going to get? But that, to me, was a signal of what we talked about, actually, where we thought, in times of need, when Lazio need a goal, he could be a great option. And I thought it was quite interesting to see Inzaghi immediately go to him when we were in that time of need, once we conceded the second goal.
I'm so upset because I wanted to bring this up. So upset.
You want to start again?
Yeah, we start again. No, seriously. Before talking about Pedro Neto, because we have to talk about this, because for me, it's a big change. It's a big signal. And we will talk a bit later, because I think it's related even to the transfer market, etc. But one thing no one noticed, a lot of people attack Inzaghi today and yesterday after the match, but I thought Inzaghi prepared the match very, very well. Lazio pressured a lot Emre Can, and you can see him struggling a lot because he's not as fast with the ball like Pjanic. So you can see, especially in the first half, how Lazio was able to recover the ball near the Juventus box. And I think that was very well prepared by Simone Inzaghi. And again, Lazio missed so many chances. I think Luis Alberto in the first half had a very clear one. He kicked pretty much from the penalty kick spot, and unfortunately his shot was pretty much central, so Szczesny was able to save it easily. But I think that was to show how Inzaghi prepared well the match, and how good our manager can be. We always complain about his mistakes, etc., but we have to point out even the good things. We had a question about Parolo playing on the right side. I thought Alistair Parolo played really well. Obviously, he hasn't got the pace of a winger, as he never played there, and I don't think that's his skill. But he has the experience to play there. He's smart enough to know where he has to be positioned every time, so that helped him. And again, let's not forget that Lazio played with Radu, Wallace, Bastos against Cristiano Ronaldo, and Ronaldo scored only on a penalty. I thought Bastos was terrific. I don't know, do you think in the first goal Bastos make a mistake? I thought he was a little bit tired, and Bernardeschi was fresh, and he's much faster than Bastos, and that's why he passed him so easily.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these ones that looks really bad on a replay for Bastos, but I think it's quite hard to criticise him for it too much, just because the reason he was having such a good game and that Ronaldo was having such a bad game was because he was defending so aggressively, and he was really tight on his man the whole time and getting in front of his man and basically being an absolute nuisance to whoever he was marking, and they kind of shifted around there. forward players quite a lot to try and kind of get Ronaldo away from him. And yeah, I think he was, like you say, he was tiring a bit to that stage, and he was trying to do the same thing and just get really tight to Bernardeschi and don't give him any space. But Bernardeschi, obviously being fresher and quite a skillful player, is capable of doing these kind of things anyway. And I think he read it a lot better, and Bastos by that time wasn't quite as fresh either. So yeah, I think that he had a much better game than any of us had any right to expect. But I mean, it's quite funny to think about now the fact that in our 2 games against Juventus, we've seen the best performance of the season from Bastos and the best performance of the season from Wallace. In both games, them kind of marking Ronaldo out of the match. Fair enough, we both lost both games, but
that's not important.
Yeah, never mind that. But yeah, this question, it was Patrick Bowman, I just found it, was asking what we think of Parolo on the right side. Can he be a more permanent solution? Because it doesn't seem like we're getting anyone during this window. I think that Parolo on the right was a really smart move. Like you say, he's got the experience. He said that himself after the game, that once you've been playing for a certain amount of time, it's easier to adapt because you understand the game better. And yeah, one of his best qualities, like we often say, is his work rate, the fact that he will cover enormous distances during a match. And that's something that Inzaghi wants from his wing-backs, is that they're capable of contributing in both phases, and Parolo can do that. In terms of him being a permanent solution, though, I absolutely not. I mean, I think at the moment he kind of has to be, because just simply because of the numbers. It's got, all of a sudden, we'll get onto the Mercato a bit later on, but the fact that now Cáceres is gone, Maricic was obviously unavailable, Dusan Basta's not even in the squad list, and Patrick was injured. It's quite an incredible situation to end up in, where we're in this position, because we've been talking all season long about the problem being the lack of quality in that position, not the lack of numbers. And all of a sudden, we have nobody left. So, yeah, I mean, if ever there was a message to the club hierarchy to get somebody new in, this has got to be it. And it should be said as well that the Curva Nord made that clear as well last night with a big banner basically asking the club to make some signings too.
Yeah, one thing about Parolo playing on that position, one thing that Parolo is very good is getting in the box, and now that he's playing in a central midfield position, he doesn't have that chance, because playing with Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto, he has to be more careful to defend, give extra coverage. While playing on the right side, he's more free to push, and we saw it especially in the first half, how many times he was in the box trying to finish it. And that's something that unfortunately Maruzic doesn't have. And to be honest, Patrick has a little bit more, but he's not very good in finishing. So that's something that Parolo brings that the other players don't. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to continue playing that. Maruzic will be available for the Coppa Italia match this Thursday. But one of the biggest difference is Napoli had key players missing against Lazio. And then you go and watch the starting 11 in Napoli. And you say, who's missing there? Because they had all 11 quality players, all playing in their position. It's not that Ancelotti had to put a central defender at left wing or things like that. Same thing with Juventus. You think of Mandzukic not playing, Pjanic injured, etc., Chiellini on the bench, and still they had an amazing starting 11. And then you check Lazio, and with Acerbi suspended and Ramos injured, the defense was a nightmare. Lazio fans were really scared about the defense. Parolo had to play in for the first time in that position, and so on. So this is where you see how many problems Lazio has, because there are so many less option compared to the other teams that are fighting for the Champions League and above that Lazio have. And then the other thing about the banner, I thought it was good to point that out. I mean, except Roma, all the other clubs fighting for the Champions League sign at least one player. Lazio and Roma are the only one at the moment who didn't. And the most worrying thing, Alistair, I don't know if you agree with me, is the interview that Diaconale did this morning, saying that club and fans and players should be all on the same side, that putting that banner out was against the players. It was never against the player. It was against Lotito and Tare that are not doing nothing this winter. Now, that was really concerning because it was clear that it was against Lotito and Tare. And if the club put it out like this, then or didn't understand nothing, or they're trying to defend and say, hey, we don't want to do nothing this winter. So this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they had every right to make that point, because it's kind of contradictory to talk about the Champions League and to demand or set the target of a top 4 spot to Inzaghi as the club directors, and then not help him out in the market. Because like you say, the other clubs are all doing it. And if it went to form, if football was as, thankfully it's not, but if football was as simplistic as the economics and we're going by wage budgets, Lazio would finish 6th every year. So 4th is economically an overachievement for Lazio, but that doesn't mean it should be any less likely. But it does mean that when things are stretched and difficult, you do need to consider actually spending some money to help us out halfway through the season, because it's quite obvious what the problems are. Inzaghi's made no secret to that either. And I think as well, the other thing is we've just been quite lucky with this. I mean, this isn't something that we would have been saying a few years ago, Lazio being lucky with injuries, but there have actually been very few times over the last year and a half where we've had a full-blown crisis in terms of losing really quite a few important players at the same time. And then all of a sudden now, last night, when you're piecing together that defence and you suddenly do realise the severe lack of quality once you go a bit further beyond the starting 11. Because I think the starting 11, without doubt, is as good as the ones that Milan and Roma can put out. But like you say, they're, the other clubs are investing or have invested heavily over the summer, and should be in a stronger position. So I think that we have every right as fans to ask questions about this, because, like I say, it's a bit of a contradiction to expect and to aim for the Champions League without actually backing your coach when he needs you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not that much that Lazio have sold players or give away players, because a lot of them weren't playing that much. Casares was the only one who started matches this season with Lazio. But the fact that all the other teams are signing players and most of them will start, that widens the gap between Lazio and the other teams. So you can't ignore this. The other teams are getting better. And already I thought there was a gap in Lazio team and the others. And now it's wider. And the fact that the club... Yesterday Tare said that they had a lot of injuries, so they're thinking of maybe doing something. So there is this maybe that keep us alive, but
I got to get a move on. There's 3 days, 3 days to go.
Yeah, and
now we've got talk of all the Mr. X stuff happening again, and oh god, it's I don't know. I can't help but feel that when the Mr. X stories arrive, it just basically means that nobody has a clue what's going on, and they're just hoping for the best. But
yeah, absolutely.
Cynical.
And we know how slow Lotito and Tare are, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're not able to sign him before the window close.
I imagine that the most likely outcome here is simply going to be that they run out of time and Anderson ends up coming back from Salernitana. And that's tried to paint as some sort of resolution to the problem, which it certainly isn't in my mind.
I would be more pessimistic. Anderson said this weekend that he wants to stay at Salernitana because he wants to play. So I fear the option will be to put back Basta in the squad. And Inzaghi a little bit said it last Saturday, so I fear it's going to be the solution. Which, it's a solution, but it's not what everybody expected, right? Because the other teams are signing quality players and we get back Basta, who has been terrible this season when he played. So I don't know if you can call it a reinforcement.
New signing.
Like what? Like
actually do a presentation for Dusan Basta being brought back into the squad. Give him a scarf. Do a press conference.
we can do it with Lukaku, right? Because it was sold and then he came back.
Yeah. The quickest trip to Newcastle I think anyone's ever made. But yeah, I mean, that was another really bizarre subplot that's happened this week. I mean, this week has been a really strange week, all in all, with obviously with the Lukaku thing seeming like a done deal and then turning on its head, and then also with Cáceres happening very quickly and ending up in a completely different destination from where we expected in the first place. I mean, I think any of us who have been watching him this season would not expect him to be attracting the attention of Juventus. But they seem to be very much thinking along the same lines of how Lazio were thinking this time last year, which is, here's a useful player who can play in lots of different positions and he's cheap, which is all true. But after a year, we've been very underwhelmed with what he can offer. So it does surprise me a little bit.
It does surprise, but... And I see a lot of fans reacting to this on social media saying, how can it be possible? Inzaghi couldn't see him and now he's going to play for Juventus. Wait a minute, I'm not sure how much he's going to play with Juventus. I think he's going to be like the fifth option at the moment. Obviously, if there are going to be a lot of injury, then he will be forced to play. But I don't believe that he's going to see a lot of playtime with Juventus. And if you think about it, it makes sense to bring him back. You need an experienced player, someone who maybe already know the club, and Cáceres played for Juventus for a long time, who can play in different positions. And I think that Cáceres checks a lot of those boxes. Now, I don't know how well he can play, because let's be honest, when he played with Lazio, he wasn't that great. So... we're gonna see how it works out.
Yeah, I'd be amazed. I'd be amazed if he gets much game time. Like you say, it's a kind of desperate measures kind of player to have on the books. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, I suppose that we all expected a lot more from Cáceres, and he did seem to be, for all the reasons I've just said, a good signing this time last year. And then generally he's not really been needed because he's been behind other players in the pecking order. And then all of a sudden, probably when we need him most, last night, to actually fill in defence or on the right side as a wing-back, he's not there anymore. So it kind of neatly sums up his time at Lazio, I think, is that he's not really been required much. And then when he might be, he's playing for the opposition. So... yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, but I think it's worth talking about the Lukaku deal as well, because some people have, I think, asked us about it and been a bit confused about what happened.
So, Alistair, there have been... what the transfer market expert announced said that there wasn't an agreement on the deal. Basically, Lazio wanted Newcastle to pay all the salary of Lukaku, and Newcastle wanted Lazio to pay up a chunk of it, and knowing Lotito would never agree on that, and so that's why Lukaku didn't play for Newcastle, didn't sign for Newcastle. Obviously, as often happened when we're talking about Lazio, rumors came out that Lukaku is 6 kilo fatter than he should be, so he did the medicals with Newcastle. Newcastle said no, he's not fit, we don't want him. And as it happens, this one is the news that is making more space in Lazio fan, obviously, because it always has to be negative. So, true fact is, Lotito didn't want to pay the salary of Lukaku. Newcastle didn't want to pay the full salary of Lukaku, and so they didn't make the deal. There are rumors that truth is that Lukaku is too fat.
Yeah, I mean, it did. The whole thing seemed a bit bizarre because it did come out of nowhere almost. It didn't surprise me an awful lot when I read about it, but it kind of escalated very quickly to the point that he was imminently leaving. I just about had enough time to write an article saying goodbye to him, basically, and then within about a few hours of that being published, lo and behold, the move is pulled. So yeah, makes me look bad as well. He should have thought about these things. The other question we've had about the Mercato is from Benham Haidar Shahi. I'm pretty sure I've got that name wrong, but I've given my best shot. He said, do you think we should get Zappacosta? Chelsea rate him at 18 million, but so do Transfer Market, the website he's talking about. If we make it to the Champions League, we can afford him. If not, we'll definitely sell Milinkovic-Savic, so again, we can afford him. Same with Darmian for left wing-back. Lulic and Perlo cannot run on wing-back for 90 minutes. I thought that was quite an interesting line of argument, Vittorio, because obviously that's what's been reported is that Chelsea's price for him is 18 million and as a obligation to buy after the loan's up in the summer. And that's considered too much for Lazio to pay. But like he says here, that probably is a fair valuation for the player he is, given his age and his experience and the level he's played at. And then Lazio should be able to afford him one way or another, whether they've got the funds now or not. I mean, obviously for Lazio terms it seems like a lot, but do you think that would be worth paying good value?
I don't think, honestly, Zappacosta is worthy all that money, to be honest. And I was thinking that, and I believe Tare was thinking the same, that Chelsea was willing to offer the players for less. The fact that he's not playing with Sarri, that it's an Italian, makes you really think that probably Zappacosta is not that good. I mean, he don't even have the excuse that, the manager is English and we are not able to communicate that well. If an Italian manager puts you that are Italian on the bench, that's not a good sign. Said this, and we said it, I don't know, I think since August or July, Lazio needs some players there. That's a key position. We had Parolo playing there. Cannot be a long-term solution. We know it. And Lazio has the money to do it. Maybe not 80 million for Zappacosta, but definitely Lazio has the money to spend to buy a quality player. Maybe you buy someone around 6 million and buy another one of 10 that can replace Immobile. Because as you were saying, we've been really lucky. What happened if Immobile get injured tomorrow? We play all season with Casado. I cannot imagine it. That would be the worst nightmare ever. So Lazio has money. They have to buy it. They have to buy someone. It's not going to be Zappacosta. As far as I know, Lazio stopped talking about with the player 2 weeks ago, something like that, 10 days ago. They're looking for other solution. I don't know if someone will really arrive, but we know that there's something missing.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Zappacosta, I agree. I think by now it's not going to happen. I think if it was going to become a thing, it would have happened by now, or at least we would have been further along by now. But still, my opinions on it are the same, which is that he does tick all the boxes for what Lazio need. He's a guy who can play in a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3. He's a decent age. He's 26, I think. But he's got experience at the top level, Champions League, Europa League, Italy, Chelsea, obviously a lot of Serie A experience, and I think he would be a great fit, and I'm convinced that he would improve this Lazio squad. But yeah, obviously the economics are the blocking point, but then again, if you've got a big hole in your squad and you've got a certain list of, I suppose, kind of boxes to tick for what you need to fill in that spot, and you've got a player available there who ticks all those boxes, then surely that's worth doing. I mean, I understand that it seems like a lot of money for a guy who's not going to win games by himself, but I don't think it is. I really don't think it is, and I think given how much he'd improved what's been the weakest part of the team all season long, it would be a deal worth doing. But yeah, it's not going to happen. I like the idea, like you say, of spending 6 on someone there as backup and 10 on someone as Immobile, but it's too sensible, Vittorio. It's not going to happen.
No.
But I mean, you're absolutely right. What happens if on the 1st of February or 2 minutes after the deadline finishes, Ciro Immobile, God forbid, touch wood, he falls down the stairs and breaks his ankle. I mean, it's not incredibly unlikely that he could hurt himself at some point. And then, you're left with Caicedo as literally the only striker in the squad. I mean, you'd be talking about Correa playing up there, maybe Pedro Neto being used up there, neither of which is a natural number 9. So that is a terrifying reality, and it's one that's been overlooked far too much for my liking.
Yeah. Before we continue talking about transfer market, a couple of questions we received about the match, about yesterday's match. Patrick Bowman says, we gave away the initiative after Inzaghi started to wave the players to stay back from the sideline. I thought the substitution Juventus made forced Lazio to retreat a little bit. With Cancelo playing, with Bernardeschi playing there, Juventus started pushing, and it was obvious that Lazio couldn't keep pressing that much. And as well, after Leva got the yellow card, I thought he was forced to a little bit think twice before doing tackles. So I think that's mostly the reason why Lazio start defending a little more. Ramel Gendi say he could have brought in Badel or Cataldi in midfield for Immobile to close the game out. I think you always need to have someone there in front, otherwise Juventus would start attacking with all the players, even with the defender, and it would be a nightmare for Lazio to get out of the box. It would have been a disaster for me. So you always have to keep a striker high there to at least force Juventus to keep 1 or 2 defenders there to mark him. And then still again saying, why didn't Lulic play on the right and Durmisi on the left? If you are Durmisi and see this, wouldn't you feel like? Well, Durmisi was pretty much sold to another team, if I'm not wrong. So I don't know how Lazio is feeling about the player. But yeah, now he's back, and so I think he will be playing maybe this Thursday in Coppa Italia.
Yeah, I think that, to be honest, Durmisi is a player that Inzaghi is yet to really trust so far this season. He's spoken openly about the fact that he'll need a bit of time to adapt to the way that the team plays tactically, and obviously the defensive side of his game, like Lukaku as well, isn't exactly brilliant. So I think for a game of this magnitude, and especially because playing Lulic on the right wasn't a roaring success, I think what he went with in the end was a more sensible option, because he's basically gone with players he can trust, which he likes to do, as we know. And by moving Parolo to the right, I'm pretty sure he would have been fairly confident Parolo's capable of doing that, because don't forget, we already got a little bit of that against Napoli last week. Towards the end of the Napoli game, Parolo was ended up playing in that position. So, yeah, I think that's probably more likely than anything to be the reasoning behind it. I mean, from what we've seen of Durmisi, I quite like the look of him, but so I hope we get to see a bit more of him now, and especially given that with the Lukaku thing being as it was, it is quite clear that if it's not now, it'll be in the summer that he'll go. I mean, last summer we kind of expected him to go as well, so I don't really see the point in giving Lukaku many more games for the rest of the season, to be honest, unless we're desperate.
And, and, and,
Messi.
and Alistair, this makes me think why he started against Napoli. Because if you're thinking of selling him, then why give him a chance in such important match? That was really surprising for me. And talking about Durmisi, as we said, well, he was linked to go back to Spain, so I don't know how much Inzaghi trusts him after this. And talking about Parolo, don't forget that last year Murgia played a lot of time on the wing. I think it was the left side, if I'm not wrong. But so we saw that it's not the first time that Inzaghi moved players on the side. So we're going to see what happens. I think that now with Maruzic back, Bassa will be added, and so we'll see those three players with Patrick again fighting for that position. I don't think Parolo will play, especially considering that next Monday, Lazio's playing Monday against Frosinone. Milinkovic-Savic won't be able to play, so I think Parolo will go back in a central position.
Yeah, just to go back to the questions we've got again. Stephen Scarpula, who was one of the ones who was asking us about Lukaku, so I hope we've answered that now. He said that now that we've got that mess out of the way, Napoli and Juventus, do you anticipate a good run as there was during the first half of the season? Because obviously, when the season started, Lazio lost the opening two games, then went on a great run, and were back in the Champions League places before too long. So, I don't know. What do you think? Are you feeling confident that we're going to go on another run like that?
Who knows? Obviously, if Lazio plays like this, like they play against Juventus, against Frosinone, it's going to be a tennis match. But who knows if Lazio is going to replicate this type of performance? The positive thing is that after the Juventus match, Lazio was 6 points away from the top position. Now it's only 3. So this make it easier for Lazio to get back to the Champions League spot. I hope this match give confidence to the team and as well show to Inzaghi how Lazio will have to play. And yeah, again, the other teams have both good players, but they didn't play amazingly well. I thought Ancelotti got completely wrong the starting 11 against Napoli. That's why they didn't beat Milan. But yeah, I think Lazio, if they play like this, they're going to be able to get back to the 4th spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that we're in a better position now than we were after those opening two games, both because the squad's been playing together a lot more and has been playing a lot like their old selves again, but also because the two performances that we've had against Napoli and Juventus this time round have been better than they were the first time around as well. So there's a bit more confidence in the team, I think, that they can go on. And yeah, that was a great run that we went on after those opening games. But you have to remember that actually a lot of those matches, it was, the Frosinone-Empoli games immediately were both 1-0 wins, and the kind of actual impressive performances were few and far between, and that was quite encouraging to a certain extent to see Lazio winning games that they weren't completely dominant in. But I think from what we've seen last night and just generally since kind of the end of December, I think that Lazio are heading towards being able to put in some much more clinical and impressive performances against the teams lower down the table than we did at the first half of the season. I think this little run coming up to the derby is absolutely crucial. If you look at the fixtures, there's Frosinone, Empoli, Genoa and Udinese, and really those are 4 games you want to be ideally taking maximum points from. But you've also got the 2 Sevilla games and the Inter Coppa Italia game in between all that as well. So the fixtures are kind of piling up quite a lot. But like you say, I mean, I think you said at the start of the show, Vittorio, that if you want to look at this in a negative way, Lazio are down in 8th place. And and lost 2 games in a row. But yeah, like you said, there's a 3-point gap to fourth. It's an unbelievably tight race, and we have, I suppose, now got the two best teams in Italy out the way. They're done now for the rest of the season. We don't have to worry about them again. And yeah, I think that with a 3-point gap and the fixture list coming up, I wouldn't worry too much about being in eighth. I don't think that's really worth paying too much attention to. I think it's more the performances of the team, and yeah, they've been more promising for me of late.
Yeah, and if you remember very well, Lazio didn't play well that matches, and we were saying every time, well, it's positive that you win those matches that you don't play really well. I hope this time it's going to be different because Luis Alberto is back, Milinkovic Savic is back, so it looks like this team is back to the 2018 form, can we say like that, or last season performance. But Alistair, I was really impressed by Bastos and Wallace. We've been so hard with them. I mean, we can talk about, we said a little bit about the first goal. I thought Bastos was terrific yesterday, and I thought, well, he needs to play more. He deserved to play more after yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think we've been, like you say, been hard on them when we needed to be, but I think we've also been reasonable a lot of the time in pointing out that they are capable of good games, and they have had a lot of good games for Lazio, Bastos and Wallace. But yeah, it's the kind of erratic nature of their performances, and that obviously the acknowledgement that they will make a really bad error at some point, and you just never know when it's going to happen. And yesterday, yeah, I think you're right. Bastos in particular had a good game. Wallace, I think, though, went under the radar a bit because that was the first time all season long he's played in the centre of that back three. I can't remember even last season when the last time was he played in the centre of a back three.
I think never.
Yeah, it's a very different role, as we kind of spoke about that last week, so I won't go back into that. But I think that he does deserve a lot of credit for adjusting to that. And there were a few dodgy moments. There always are with Wallace. But on the whole, I think it was a good performance, and you can't really criticise him too much for either of the goals. I think Lulic made a bad error by giving away the penalty. I don't think he needed to do it. It was a bad decision. But yeah, for Bastos and Wallace to not be the focus of our criticism is probably a bit of a surprise, to be honest.
You know what I was thinking yesterday about Wallace? That his biggest mistake is that often he forgets his man. And so playing as a sweeper in that central three defense helped him because he didn't have to mark always a player. So he was free to move and... yeah, he couldn't lose his player because he didn't have one. So, you take one of his weaknesses away. So that's a little bit better for him. Obviously, what stays is when he has the ball. He's terrible. When he has to pass the ball, he always make mistake. And yesterday, I didn't count it, but I think he was awful. He kicked the ball a couple of times really badly, nearly giving a second chance to Juventus. So, but overall, I think Bastos was the best defender. Again, not a great performance by Radu, but overall, you cannot say nothing to this Lazio defense. I think we really played good. Probably Leva or Luis Alberto, man of the match for Lazio yesterday.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Leva because for me he was absolutely brilliant. He set the tone for the whole performance, because especially in that first half, the way that he was going in really hard to tackles but winning them cleanly, and he was launching all the attacks by doing that. He was mopping up the ball so well in midfield to actually provide the platform for which those attacks could be set off, and that for me was his best performance of the season, Lucas. And I think you could say that about a few players. I already said that about Bastos as well, but it's a really positive kind of performance on the whole from the team. It's just a really strange situation to be in where you say that it's ended up with a defeat. It's funny. I mean, when we talk about Bastos, I bought the Corriere dello Sport today, and they've given the Bastos the award as being Lazio's worst player last night, and I think that was probably just from his mistake for the first goal more than anything else. But I thought that was a little bit harsh, if I'm honest.
Well, if you see Laziali Siamo Noi give 5.5 to Strakosha saying that he made a terrible mistake on the first goal, I think even the best Buffon would have stopped that shot of Dybala. Simply, some people talk about football without knowing what football is. That's the only thing I can think about it.
Yeah, and well, the one thing I should say about those ratings I just talked about was that he was given the worst player, but having been given a 6, which a lot of players on the team were given. And for those who aren't that familiar with kind of Italian newspaper ratings, a 6 isn't bad. I mean, usually nobody really gets higher than 7.5. So I think he was the worst because they had to choose someone who'd done badly, but he wasn't necessarily terrible.
6 is okay. It's okay. You did your job. Nothing special. Nothing terrible. But yeah, I don't agree. I mean, he was great. I mean, if you give 6 to Bastos, then Radu, what does he get? Casado, 2. I mean, anyway. Alistair, one thing very important yesterday, I thought it was in the last couple of minutes when Lazio was down, Inzaghi calling Bastos, maybe that's why he got the low rating, and brought in Pedro Neto. We were talking about this a lot of time, and I believe something have changed. Probably the transfer market, the fact that a lot of players left the team, opened spaces for Pedro Neto, but I think as well the performance he had against Novara made probably Inzaghi think that the player is ready. Do you think this is just the beginning, or it was only desperate mode?
Well, I think it is the beginning. Yeah, I mean he's in the squads on the bench and has now been used twice since the turn of the year. So I think certainly there is that in itself is a statement that Inzaghi is ready to start integrating him into the first team. He's taken his time, but we've got there in the end. And yeah, but I do still think that Inzaghi's more likely to use him either in desperate measures where something new and fresh is needed because he offers something from the bench that basically no one else can. And also perhaps in situations where the game's already tied up, like the Novara game. So, I mean, those are two different sets of circumstances that we will come across between now and the end of the season. So I do expect that we will see more of him. But I think the other thing is we've gone past the point now of having, I suppose, what you call soft matches where you can afford to give him a start because the Europa League group stage is done, the easy Coppa Italia game is done, and all the games between now and the end of the season are too important. At least they will be in Inzaghi's mind to put Neto in from the start. I'd be really surprised if we see him start any matches unless there's a big injury crisis. But yeah, I do hope that this now means that we'll get to see a bit more of him from the bench because he does look like, with his pace, his directness, his ability on the ball to get past players, I think he could be a really useful weapon.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be starting except if he shows that he's that good and ready to start. But I hope so, that yesterday showed that Inzaghi is willing to give him a go, especially in the last part of matches. And we saw yesterday that at a certain point he moved Correa on one side and Lazio played nearly with not a 4-3-3 because it was still a three-man defense, but with high wingers, and so there is the option to put Correa on one side, Immobile in the center, and Pedro Neto on the other side, because Luis Alberto is not a winger, he's more a central player, so you can play very offensive if Luis Alberto is still there, with Luis Alberto behind the three players, with Pedro Neto and Correa on the wingers. I think that could be an interesting option. The thing is, when you're so desperate, you need someone that puts the ball in the box and someone good with a header like Milinkovic Savic, or in that case Caicedo. So you don't really need that Pedro Neto to, and that's why he didn't touch that many balls in those 3-4 minutes he played. That was my only regret.
Yeah, the other thing will be, I was wondering is if this will mean Bruno Jordão will be on our radar at any point soon as well, because they've gone hand in hand, I suppose, in terms of discussions about it. It's always the two Portuguese players, but I suppose the problem that Jordão's got is the incredible competition as a central midfielder, and I think that'll make his introduction a lot more unlikely. You see Alessandro Murgia supposedly very close now to joining Spal on loan. What do you think of that as a move, Spal? I mean, as far as the last report I read was an 18-month loan move, which is quite a long-term commitment, but a very good coach in Semplici, and yeah, I think it could be quite a decent move for him.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised about the length. I think it's him and Lombardi that had 18 months. Now I can understand Lombardi because it looks like Inzaghi doesn't believe he's going to be able to play in the 3-5-2. But Murgia, I think he just needs to play more and show that he's able, especially if, and I believe that probably Badel this summer will be sold somewhere else. So there could be a gap opening there, and so instead of 18 months, it could be just 8 months, and then Murgia could be back this summer. So that's a little bit surprising, the length of the deal, if it's going to be made. But I think that Murgia needs to play like every youngster. He needs to improve, and he needs to play. So I think Spal could be the perfect fit. Again, we don't know if he's really going to play there, but no one can guarantee that. So
I think for me it's a more encouraging move than some of the other ones he's been linked with in terms of going to Kiev or Bologna, some of these teams, because Spal's a pretty stable club who do play a nice style of football, and they're well coached and won't get relegated. I'd be surprised if they get relegated. There's too many bad teams below them. So yeah, I think it's as a lone club, it's quite a good one for him. In my mind, far better than those two teams I mentioned before, because Kiev are only getting relegated. That's their season finished, and Bologna are a complete train wreck, and Sinisa Mihailovic has got a big job in his hands now.
Yeah, and as you were saying, I think Spal is pretty much safe, and so can try to play football instead of thinking, oh my God, we have to get a point because otherwise we're going in Serie B. So I think that could be a good option.
They play 3-5-2 as well, so they play a similar system to Lazio, which is nice.
Yeah, and I think it's a good fit. Now we have to hope that the others plays as well. Lombardi, I think, didn't play this weekend with Venezia. Rossi came out. Palombi scored again and scored against Salernitana this Saturday. So he's having quite a decent season, I would say. So yeah, let's see what happens. But it would be good, honestly, to see Pedro Neto playing a little bit more, not starting, but I think he really got the talent. And I was thinking all week long, what happened to Inzaghi, because we saw him in the past years giving chances to youngster. He launched Murgia, he started Strakosha, and so on. So why he's not willing to give a chance to Pedro Neto and Bruno Jordão? I think now that he sent those players away, I mean, imagine Bruno Jordão entering with all the other players there. I think Inzaghi could never allow that, or he would be, he could create problems in the locker. So I think that we're gonna hopefully see more Pedro Neto. Bruno Jordão, as you were saying, there's a problem there. There are so many players playing in his position. It's gonna be difficult.
Yeah, I think he's got a big queue in front of him. Yeah, and I suppose the other in terms of youngsters to look out for, the only other one that has been talked about is the young Portuguese defender who was on the bench last night. Another Jorge Mendes client, and I've completely blanked on what his name is now.
Silva. Yep.
That's the one.
But the other point, the other very positive thing is Luan Capuani, if I pronounce it well, the Brazilian striker. Well, he's not a striker, he's more a trequartista, which is a little bit of a problem because Lazio has so many trequartistas at the moment, so many players that can play in that position, even though he said that more than a trequartista, he's a striker who plays near the central forward, so he could be a nice option to Ciro Immobile. He's starting playing really well with Primavera. He scored Saturday against Pescara, and yeah, he's looking really promising. So Lazio has a lot of youngsters coming up, and I hope Inzaghi will give them the chance because, well, it was an emergency situation Sunday to call Silva because there were so many defenders missing. But there are a couple of interesting players in Primavera that could become really useful in the coming years for Lazio. I hope this doesn't take so long, but it's going to be next year that they start to play with the first squad. So we're going to see. But yeah, there are some promising signs.
Yeah, and we saw a little bit of Armini as well earlier this season, and I think the reason he was I think injured for last night, which is why
he didn't play with Primavera.
Yeah, why he was on the bench. But the Primavera team do seem to be doing a lot better and kind of heading towards getting promoted back into the top league again after the disaster of last year. So that's something positive as well. So yeah, some green shoots down there, which is nice.
Yep, I think we can wrap it up here, Alistair, if you don't have some stats to close the show.
Well, the only stats I could really find are actually quite depressing. So I'm not sure that...
okay, we can skip it then.
How many people want to hear them. But yeah, because I don't really want to do that because I feel like I say, despite the loss, it was a positive performance. And like I said on Twitter last night, I came out of last night's game actually feeling really proud of Lazio for the way they played, and I think they really reminded a lot of people of what this team can be like. It was amazing how many people out there were just expecting Lazio to roll over and this to be a really boring game, and this has been a real wake-up call to lots of the rest of Italy and the rest of the league that Lazio have a really talented team and can cause teams real problems. So yeah, it was a really encouraging evening for me despite the result.
If you say so.
Come on, someone has to be positive.
yeah. Well, I brought a lot of positive things. I'm not sure Lazio will replicate this performance in the next weeks. That's my biggest concern. But it was good to see Luis Alberto especially playing that well. I thought he was the key in the first half for Lazio performance. Anyway, we're going to come back next Thursday because Lazio's playing Coppa Italia against Inter. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Please rate and review the podcast if you like it. And on Spreaker. And if you want to support us, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Thank you again, Alistair. Have a nice weekend. We're going to talk Thursday.
Speak to you then.
Ciao, ciao. Watching